32 teams, 16 shows, formatted by Week 17 matchup. This is Episode 6, Arizona at Philly.
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, Cardinals fans here talking about Cardinals season. Not looking forward to this season. We've been through some lows, we've been through some highs, mostly lows. This is definitely going to be a low. So a lot to talk about here for the Cardinals. Eagles coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. There's gonna be some confusing things to talk about here. When it comes to receivers, that's very obvious. When it comes to the running backs, especially over the last day or so, we're starting to learn more about their depth chart. Maybe Swift isn't as high as we thought he is on this depth chart. So things to talk about there. Ellie, how you doing, man? What's going on with you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just excited to actually be able to talk about the Cardinals without everybody looking at me like I'm a fucking weirdo. I finally get to talk about Michael Wilson, and it means something, right?
Yeah, right. Michael Wilson is going to be my round 19 / round 20 pick pretty much the rest of the best ball season, as long as he's still in that range. All right, so let's talk about some injuries here. We have a lot to talk about here, so we'll try to get this show under around 30 minutes, hopefully. Let's get into injuries here.
Just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So there's some injuries on the Arizona side, which is mainly what we need to talk about here. We got Zach Ertz. He's recovering from an ACL injury. He's an older guy. He looked great last year with Kyler. I mean, he looked good. But at this point, with the amount of money he's making, you've got Trey McBride waiting in the wings. He's a draft pick for the Cardinals. At what point do the Cardinals just say, nah, let's just play McBride, considering the expectation for this season is tank for Tua situation, pretty much, or tank for Caleb. So what are we thinking about Ertz? You had some pretty interesting opinions on this.
Yeah, man. So I think the Cardinals offense is a very interesting situation anyways. I think there's a lot of people just bypassing them because Kyler's not playing for the first half of the season at least, right? Which is kind of silly to me. Zach Ertz, to answer your question, I mean, he was brought in when the team was a potential contender, right? This was the year where they were 10-0, 11-0. They lost the game to Green Bay because AJ Green
didn't
wasn't
turn around.
alive.
Yeah,
his controller unplugged. But yeah, so that's old regime type stuff. This is Zach Ertz is probably gonna be a cut candidate. He's getting paid a lot of money. He'll get cut, and then I think he'll be able to sign with a contender. Maybe he goes back to Philly to finish it out. I could see something like that happening. So, what that means, we'll get to it a little bit more when we talk about Trey McBride in ADP. But you can capture some of this. Zach Ertz is probably going to get cut. When that happens, Trey McBride's going to fucking be a very popular tight end in best ball. So, I think it's important to keep an eye on that. He might get cut before even preseason. I don't. We get too deep into preseason, man.
Okay. So next, we saw Marlon Mack get signed back from the dead. I was kind of excited about that. I'm like, "Ooh, Marlon Mack, man, he could be a number 2 running back here." One day later, torn Achilles. I think, unfortunately, I do think that Marlon Mack, his career is probably over at this point. Maybe we see him be the lead rusher for some team in the XFL next year or something. I don't know. But right now, you got Marlon Mack out. That opens up that number 2 spot. Keontae Ingram, he had an undisclosed injury, but he did return the other day. Now he's practicing ahead of Corey Clement. Corey Clement, maybe number 3. Anyways, my point here is it's James Conner. I know we have some injuries to talk about behind him, but James Conner is going to be the guy. When we'll get more into that in narratives. And the most important thing to talk about here, sort of buried the lead, was Kyler Murray. So, in my opinion, there's all this talk that he wants to be ready for week 1 and blah, blah, blah. It's he should not be out there before week 10. Like, I really don't think he should be out there before week 10 or week 12. Once he is like 100% and he's just waiting around to play, I think you got to run him out there no matter what your record is, especially if you have a bad record, and especially if there's a chance that you could end up picking number 1 next year. You got to see what he's got in the tank. You got to see how that knee is working. And I think with a new regime here, you got to actually see, can this guy be our future quarterback? And if he plays well and you see him recover, then you could trade out of that first pick if you need to. My opinion on it is, once he's healthy, he will go out there at 100% speed no matter what the record is. What are your thoughts? I think you disagree with me, right?
I disagree with you vehemently. I fucking know how to say that. I disagree with you very much. Now, this is also a case of kind of wishful thinking too. The NFL is a little bit different when we're talking about tanking. These are professional athletes. There's over 50 people on your team. This isn't MLB where you have 20 people, or basketball where you have 15 people. Right? It's a much different situation when you're tanking. These guys may not be able to play football ever again. They could get injured because they're tanking and taking a day off. Right? Like it's a very serious thing. Now, all that being said, I think the Arizona Cardinals would be doing a huge disservice to the future of their franchise, which is kind of the name of their game. So
yeah, that's on
if
par.
by playing Kyler, right? Because there's nothing you can do to convince me that any quarterback in college right now is an NFL Rookie of the Year, right? Because we know it's 100% not true. So trying to see what Kyler has in him, um, it's really not a thing to me, right? We already know who he is. We already know that he's a potential MVP candidate. And Patrick Mahomes, what did he say? That Kyler's one of his favorite players to watch. So like, he's already a stud. We know who he is. The only thing that you can do by playing him is decrease his value if he sucks. What if he does come out and his knee is hurting a little bit, or he doesn't necessarily have the same chemistry because he no longer has a true wide receiver, right? A true wide receiver one outside of Michael Wilson, which we'll get to at some point. His core wide receivers are Rondell Moore and Marquise Brown, right? And again, like those narratives all tie back into Kyler. If the team's 0-8 when Kyler's injury is done, what incentive do they have to play him, right? You're already pretty much guaranteed the number 1 pick, and you're gonna get a haul. We saw what the haul was for the number 1 overall pick last year. If Caleb Williams is truly that guy, then you're gonna get a haul. You're gonna be able to have Kyler Murray, and you're probably still gonna be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr. because you have Houston's
Number
pick
2,
too,
potentially.
So, like my point is if you're gonna rebuild this franchise, playing Kyler is not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And last point on Kyler. Guess when his contract starts in? The 160 million guaranteed? That starts next season. This season, he's still under his rookie scale. So he's making like $10 million. So you're going to risk a 5-year guaranteed contract to play 3-4 more games and potentially lose out on a top overall pick. That is dumbassery. Now, before I progress off that is also the Bidwells. Yeah. So, keep that in mind.
You make some good points there. I guess what you're saying is Kyler is the future quarterback. They don't need to judge how he comes back. He's the guy no matter what. And let's just tank and get a haul for that first pick, and Kyler's your guy next year. I do agree with you in that case. If you think that, if you're the front office, absolutely. This is the Cardinals after all. So we can't really guarantee that. All right, so screw the Cardinals here because, in my opinion, I know you have a ton of Arizona when it comes to best ball. Later rounds, you have some interesting stacks, and I think there's some value to be had there because, look, we've seen it with like Houston, we've seen it with some of these other teams. There are fantasy relevant players on all of these teams that are bad, especially when there's injuries, when they're tanking. But in this case, I want to get into the Eagles more so because the running back situation every year, we know it's going to be bad. It seems to be worse than ever right now because there's so many damn options and there's so many unknowns because you have 2 new guys coming in. Just before we started recording this, now, obviously this is a preseason depth chart, so you can't really hold too. I mean, we saw Bijan Robinson as the number 5 running back for Atlanta. Like, it's all bullshit. But the interesting thing here is Gainwell / Penny / Scott / Sermon / DeAndre Swift. They're like all ones. They're obviously not trying to give away too much here, and I'm excited to see some preseason stuff to see who's playing and who's not. If you see DeAndre Swift out there for 2 quarters, oh shit, he might not be looking too good, that kind of thing. So I have some slides to pull up here in a minute, but just what do we do about this situation? What are you doing so far? And based on the information that we're getting now, are you changing your strategy on where you're drafting these guys?
Not really. My strategy's not changing all that much. I think it's just really difficult to kind of get to some of these running backs. DeAndre Swift is too high in ADP. I already don't like taking running backs that early. And Rashad Penny just falls into a nice range where I'm comfortable getting to him, mostly because I've taken wide receivers for the first 15 rounds. So, that kind of changes it. But, and then Kenneth Gainwell, I mean, he's damn near free. When you're in those 15 plus rounds, like I don't expect him to be your RB2. Like if he's your second running back, you're kind of fucked. But I mean, other than that, like if he's your fourth or fifth guy, then great depth. And then, I just think Boston Scott probably is. I don't know much about the salary caps in the NFL, but like I don't know that Boston Scott's going to be the guy to make the squad. They're carrying a lot of running backs.
And Scott is, I mean, they did go out and re-sign him, but he's making the most amongst all these dudes. At least on paper, based on what I've seen. So are they going to keep 5 or 6 running backs? I mean, they're not keeping 6. Are they going to keep 5 and Boston Scott and Gainwell are special team dudes? I don't know. But as of right now, what I'm seeing on Twitter is everyone seems to think that Gainwell is the RB1. And I think that's absolutely stupid. Now, I think maybe his stock is rising a little bit because maybe this dude, being in the system for multiple years, being familiar with this, maybe he's a guy that's going to get some more reps. Am I saying you should be taking Kenneth Gainwell in the 7th round? No, absolutely not. The biggest worry here is Swift. Should we start to hey man, maybe I'm not taking Swift that early. Like if he falls to me a couple rounds later and everybody is like letting him fall, then maybe. But are you worried about Swift right now? Because to me, it's very obvious. It's absolutely obvious where this is going. Penny, first, second down. Swift, third down. And you have a guy like Trey Sermon, who was a high draft pick in San Francisco. Now they've got him. Trey Sermon backs up Penny for goal line and short yard stuff. Swift and Gainwell share reps for third down. That's just on paper what it seems obvious to me, but it's never going to be obvious with this Eagles team, right?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is like some of these depth charts, I think what we're seeing is these unofficial depth charts are geared more to like the first preseason game. That really can be the only thing that explains it, in my opinion, right? Like, no, why else would you have Cordell Patterson listed as your RB1 or Kenneth Gainwell tied for these other 2 guys? And then, just another thing to keep in mind, Swift and Penny, they've been injured throughout their career a little bit, even though they're short. So, we could get through a day or two and this part of the discussion may not even be relevant anymore. One of those guys goes on IR, obviously Kenneth Gainwell becomes like, he's going to be a top 130 pick. He's going to be up there with like Tank Bigsby or whatever.
Yeah.
So like that's something to keep in mind. But again, what do we expect from this Philly offense? We know AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are going to eat. Goddard's going to get involved, and Jalen Hurts is going to dominate the running game as well too. So you added a stud running back to this offense, and I looked it up last year. They had Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott, and Trey Sermon. That's what the Eagles running back rotation was. So like you're adding another back into that. It was already a pain in the ass to try to guess who it was.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. And I think the Eagles offense is going to lean a little bit more on Hurts to throw the ball this year, right? Like I think they're all tired of that narrative. We all know that the RPO is going to beat the shit out of the teams, but I really think that Hurts is going to be a little bit more airing it out. So I think it kind of impacts the upside that you're getting really from any of these running backs in earlier rounds. Outside again of Kenneth Gainwell because he's a 15+ round pick.
Yeah, and the biggest problem with all of these running backs is how many times this year are we going to see Jalen Hurts vulture a touchdown from one of these running backs in the red zone? We saw it in the Super Bowl. How many touchdowns did he have? 4 or 3 rushing? And 4 is just insane. So that's another problem with any of these guys you choose. I mean, guys like Gainwell, who is going super late. What is he going, like 16th round or 15th round? That's fine because you're going to get PPR options from him. You're going to get... And even with Swift, I know he's going a little bit too high right now, but a guy that can get you 5-6 receptions a game, may be enough. But the guys that I worry about is Penny, which I have a shitload of him, which scares me. And a guy like Trey Sermon, who nobody's taking, nobody even knows who this dude is, but he's going to get some run. Those are the guys who are hurt the most by Jalen Hurts getting those opportunities at the goal line. Let's see. Let's throw up some slides here before we get into this breakdown. Pause this if you want to read all this here. But they're saying, Kenneth Gainwell has the most touches by any running back in camp. I don't give a shit. That doesn't mean anything to me. But people seem to be buying into this, that Gainwell is like a dude who's going to be starting the season as the number one guy. And I call bullshit on that. Swift has become less involved as camp has gone along. 13 carries, blah, blah, blah. They're saying he might strictly be a third down running back. That's possible. It'd be terrible, but I don't why is he being less involved? Are they saving him? I don't know. And that's the hard part here. Is he less involved because he sucks ass? Well, then that's a problem. Penny's hard to get a read on. He has the most carries on the team, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, pause this if you want to check this out. Trey Sermon to me is not being treated as a running back that's going to be cut, is what it's saying here. So I think all these guys are in play, but I think their stock goes all down because they're all just killing each other and cannibalizing each other. All right, so running back situation from Adam Levitan. Rashad Penny, primary base back. DeAndre Swift, primary satellite back. Kenneth Gainwell back up both. Primary 4-minute drill back. Boston Scott versus Trey Sermon for one spot. So that's where I'm at here with this. And we spent so much time talking about this because it's necessary, because you're right. Hurts, Brown, Devontae Smith, we know what they're going to do. It's all these other guys that are going to give us problems. All right. Anything else to talk about here, narrative-wise?
Yeah. Just one more, let's beat the dead horse. Kenny Gainwell getting the work in the 4-minute offense. I've been seeing that him getting a lot of ball in the 2-minute situations too. Same thing. That's big. Like, that really impacts Swift. I think that's the thing that we need to be keeping an eye on, because that's where Swift is going to get involved. If he's a third down back that's not being used in fucking important situations, that's something to be concerned about. The other stuff, right, like it could just be, like you said, because it's preseason and Swift and Penny, they've have injury history, right? There's no reason for them to be running around. We know that they are physically better running backs than Trey Sermon and Boston Scott. Otherwise, Scott would start, right?
Yeah.
So, we just got to be careful about reading too much into the narrative and just pay attention to what actually happens in some of these preseason games now.
Yeah, exactly. If you see guys who are playing more and if you see Swift playing like into the third quarters or a half, that might not be a good sign. All right, let's get into this breakdown. We're going to look at everyone's ADPs and talk about strategies while you're drafting, what you do, what levers you pull. Let's do this. Break it down. All right, so obviously AJ Brown, he's going around pick 9. He's been consistently around that 8-9 range, and a lot of what's happening after that is Jalen Hurts is going, at pick 17, 18, 19-ish. He's dropped a little bit, like 2 or 3 spots over the last 2 months, but there's going to be a lot of. Every time AJ Brown gets drafted, you have to expect on the turn in the next round, Hurts is going to go next to that team. It doesn't happen every time. Sometimes they reach. Sometimes they're not paying attention. Sometimes people don't care about stacking. But look, if you draft A.J. Brown in the first round and Hurts is there, are you taking Hurts every single time?
I haven't been. So I probably need to get back to doing that. I thought my exposure was a little bit higher on the A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts stacks. It looks like I only have 3 of them. But look, it's not a terrible idea. We all know AJ Brown is going to eat. But if you just want to take Jalen Hurts naked, you can do that, right? This is another one of those situations where we know where he has the rushing upside. I think he averaged 25 points per game last season, which is 4 or 5 points higher than anybody else. So I expect some regression here, right? I don't know if he's going to necessarily come out and average that shit again, but the rushing upside that he presents is just it's too much to overcome. But I think the problem here is you're not going to be able to get Jalen Hurts plus Devontae Smith unless I don't know, I don't know, unless you hard. Have a weird pick. Yeah. So I think I don't know, it's how unique do you get? Are you willing to just have AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts be the primary stack, or if you get one of those, what pick would you need to get back to back in that range? Like, I don't
You
even know,
can't.
right?
I've looked. It's just Hurts and Smith going that close together. It's hard to get to both of them. Like basically, you'd have to get pick 2 or 3. Get Christian McCaffrey or something. Reach for AJ Brown, or I'm sorry, reach for Hurts, and then reach for Devontae by like 5 picks or something. My math is probably wrong there, but it's hard to get Hurts and Smith together unless you get Hurts in the first
if
round.
anybody, yeah, if anybody watching has this, like, show us, man. Like, we want
Yeah.
to see, like,
Yeah.
that's fucking cool.
Jump in the Discord, by the way, guys. We have a free Discord. Everyone's in there. We're talking strategy. We're always posting our drafts. And honestly, it would be nice to get some more people in there so we can draft with other people. That'd be fun. So Swift right now. Okay, well, actually, before I get to that, Devontae Smith seems to be one of these guys that I'm getting to a ton at the end of the second round, beginning of the third. Like he never drops. Like I never see him like 5 picks past ADP. Like he's always there, and I have quite a bit of him. I have him and T Higgins a lot, because at this pick I've either gotten a top end running back or a top end wide receiver, and I want to get another one. So thoughts on Smith this year? The interesting thing here is, you would think for an offense that, yes, they do throw the ball, but this is a running offense typically. A number 2 pass catcher, you wouldn't think that he'd be going this high, but he has huge upside. Both of these guys are going to get 1,000-yard seasons because all the volume is going to them. Thoughts on Smith here, and then we'll get into Swift.
Yeah, I mean, Smith should be a guy that you're approaching a little bit like T Higgins. I think people sleep on him a little bit just because they expect this to be such a run heavy offense, but the difference is you have 2 wide receivers. You're really, like, we're not going to get Greg Ward consistently involved in Cincinnati. Tyler Boyd may be consistently involved in 3 wide receiver sets. So, like,
Yeah.
those are the things that are going to take volume away from your 1 and 2. And honestly, I'm glad we're doing the show because I'm noticing my Devontae Smith is a little bit high or a little bit low compared to my T Higgins exposure.
Yeah.
So I can balance that out a little bit. I need to get more of Philly in general. It's very easy to pass over their passing game just because we're so used to them running. But as Jalen Hurts gets more comfortable in the NFL, like, I really think that he's going to develop into more of a pocket passer.
And here's the thing with these Philly stacks is if you don't commit very early in the draft, you kind of forget that there's Philly guys at all. Because look at that. There's like a bunch of dudes in the top 72 picks for Philly. If you don't get to one of them, you're not. And look, you have to like commit to Jalen Hurts in the second round if you really want to really stack these guys heavy. Now, on the other side of it, you as you're getting to Arizona, you can if you get AJ Brown but you can't get Hurts, or if you get Smith and Goddard or something, you can run it back on the other end with a round 20 quarterback and Michael Wilson around 19. You can kind of go that route, which I think I'm going to be doing a lot of as we go along. So Swift is going 67. He was at 59 2 months ago. Now he's up to 67. I think it's going to drop more because of what's going on. You saw Bijan Robinson for a day or two kind of drop. Like I saw him going like pick 19 when he should be going around 10 or 11. So I think that Swift will drop a little bit. I don't know if it'll be as drastic. The interesting thing here with Dallas Goedert is Goddard and Waller sort of switched places. Goddard was that tier 2 guy that was going first typically. Now he's kind of fallen down, and Goddard has taken his spot in that mid-60s. How much Dallas Goedert do you have? And there's a lot of mouths to feed on this offense. As being the number 1 dude in that second tier tight end range, I think I like Waller better. Don't you?
Yeah, man, I prefer Waller. And as far as my exposure to Goddard goes, I'm at 4%. So he's in 3 lineups.
Yeah.
I do have him a little bit just because, Jalen Hurts slips a little bit. I'm getting him. So, I didn't necessarily have AJ Brown or Devontae Smith in a couple of those lineups. So I went, it's Daniel, right? Daniel, goddamn. Why do I struggle with this?
You always say Dallas. You always say Daniel. You've been saying that for like 2-3 years straight.
It is Dallas? It's Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, Dallas, yeah.
Damn. Why can't I remember that? Anyways, man, like, he's fine. He's good. The issue is just like, let's look at the range that he's in here. Yeah, I mean, I still prefer I still prefer Darren Waller. He's cheaper.
Yeah, and
And
there's
then
other
look,
pass
I
catchers.
want James Conner.
Yeah,
I'd prefer to have James Conner. He's going to get 90%, 97% of the volume. You got George Pickens right there, Rashad White, MPJ, Jordan Addison. Like, there's just a lot of guys in that range that I'm taking over tight end. And then, I'm sure we've said this 1,000 times over the past couple of shows here. I'm sold on this punt tight end. Like, you can go grab Hunter Henry, Trey McBride, really whoever you want in the back end, Logan Thomas. Like, there's plenty of guys that are going to get decent run that I don't necessarily want to waste a pick on. Dallas Goedert is going to be secondary to at least AJ Brown and Devontae Smith.
yeah,
At least, right? What if Penny does get involved in the pass game? Kenny and Swift, right? You got a lot of weapons on that team that could take volume away, and we know James Conner is going to get 97% of the rushing attempts.
yeah.
So, like, it's just hard for me to lean towards Goddard at all.
And I'm usually not taking Goddard as a one-off. I mean, usually. Sometimes if he falls, I'll be like, yeah, just take Goddard here. But usually by that point, I've already sort of made up my mind on what I'm going to do with tight end. I've either gotten Kelsey, I've gotten to some of these other guys. I don't really end up falling on Goddard unless I've gotten AJ Brown or Hurts or that stack going. So let's talk about Arizona here. So the first guy that pops up is at 71. James Conner is at 71 as well. Hollywood Brown and Conner right there at the same pick. And if you look at, there's a batch of guys here. There's 4 dudes. Pick 67, Swift, Goddard 72, Marquise Brown 71, and Conner at 71. So it's clearly in this range, people are trying to stack these guys for this Week 17 matchup. To me, I haven't been getting to enough Conner. I don't know why. I've been sort of under on the Cardinals in general because I just don't know what to expect. As we start to see the camp go along, I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable that they're going to be so bad that Conner is going to get so much run. He's still under contract for another 2 years. They're going to want to use him up. I mean, honestly, like the one downside to Conner is if he's hurt, if he's like on the fringe and he could play, do they sit him out because this isn't like his last year on contract or something. Like they want to use him again next year. Are they a little bit more cautious? Does he miss more games this year? I don't know. That's going to be tough to guess. But a guy like Conner, here, let's pull up some of these stats that you sent me here. So, Ellie, read this from Johnny Venerable, Cardinals guy. Can you read that?
Well, yeah, this one, this is old. This is from the end of May, so coming into last year, right?
Here's another one.
James Conner, his PPR fantasy finishes RB5, RB12, RB4, and RB15. This is without Kyler Murray, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This is what's going to happen. We remember he was the RB1 that year. Le'Veon, like James Conner is the reason why we do not have a running back contract market. He ruined Le'Veon Bell and that whole situation. So like, there's things that we're missing, and exactly list of running backs who average 50 snaps per game, 50 plus snaps per game. Saquon and James Conner, like that's it. We know James Conner is going to get involved, and it doesn't matter who else is on the field. Now, with that said, I'm getting a decent amount of him. I have 10% James Conner, and I'll continue to pick him in this range. Granted, I'm not big on taking, again, this sound like a broken horn. I'm not big on taking running backs necessarily, but you also got to balance out some of your builds. I can't be 0 running back for
every pick, every time.
All my best ball builds. And James Conner, he fits in nicely, right? Like, especially with AJ Brown. If you want a 1-1 game stack for this, and you got AJ Brown
and Conner
or even Smith, you grab Conner as a perfect running back or run back. Now, if you are concerned that he could be leveraged, maybe traded to a contender or something for something cheap, maybe a 3rd round draft pick to help the rebuild in Arizona, then Hollywood Brown is literally in the same ADP range, right? You can still get him as a decent run back. And not to jump too far ahead, but if we're talking about Week 17 and the team that sucks, you might be having Week 17 offenses that feature Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson only, right? So these are the things that we can be looking at. These are perfect backdoor stacks, perfect opportunities to be, take AJ Brown and then not even look at a Cardinal again until rounds 18, 19, and 20.
Yes.
Grab Colt McCoy or Colton Tune, whatever the fuck his name is, Tune guy, one of the quarterbacks, right? And this is me saying Kyler Murray's not going to play the whole season because I don't think so. That's why I have 17% Colt McCoy and like 8% Clayton Tune. So like you can backdoor these stacks so easily as your third quarterback option. So I don't know, man. I kind of got carried away there. But like James Conner and Marquise Brown are in a perfect range. James Conner can be your RB1, RB2, and you're going to be fine. Marquise Brown, like if you're drafting like I have, he's going to be your wide receiver 6 at this point, wide receiver 5 at this point. So you're looking for what he does best, and that's spike weeks, right?
Yeah. Yep. And you know that Marquise Brown's going to get involved one way or another. So Rashad Penny here, he's usually a guy that I always grab in this range. I don't know why. I'm just always grabbing him because I do believe he has high upside. He could crash and burn. He could get hurt. But look, taking a dude at pick 114 in like the 10th round, and if Rashad Penny misses half the year, are you screwed? Probably not. Probably not. You'll probably be okay. So how much Kyler Murray do you have? Because earlier in the year, I was taking some Kyler Murray just for the upside of week 17. Like as I was doing Cardinal stacks with Murray with like an AJ Brown run back or something to that effect. I haven't taken Kyler Murray in like 2 months. Are you on the same page there? Like, I know you're taking a lot of the backups mainly because you think he's not going to play. But let's just say you were told right now that he's going to play week 17. Does that change your mind? Are you going to start taking him in this range, in this 160 range?
Yeah, if I knew he was going to play, I'd be open up to him. And look, I mean, I doubt you're getting a QB3 here. If you do, you're probably reaching a little bit too much. Now, keep in mind, we're about halfway through, or we're a third of the way into August now. So drafts have been happening for 2.5 months. His 159 ADP may not accurately reflect where he's being drafted today, right? It's being brought down because of the average. He could be closer to 170, 175, and that's slowly adjusting the ADP the other way, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case and you're getting him as your wide receiver 3, as your quarterback 3, I don't mind it. Especially if you think that there's a chance that he can play in those final weeks, which again, realistically, there probably is the way that the NFL works. But even if he does play that back in, I still love getting Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune as a late round quarterback because you're going to be covered weeks 1 through 6, 1 through 8, whatever it is, right? Somebody's going to end up playing those games. So I don't mind Kyler. I have 3%. I have 1 in the milli and 1 in the $3.20 max.
Let's talk about Rondale Moore here because to me he feels like the odd man out. Like Greg Dortch and Rondale Moore are the same guy, except Greg Dortch is a lot cheaper. All right. Well, so right, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So Greg Dortch led the NFL in like catchable passes last year or some shit like that. It was insane. Like Greg Dortch just came out of nowhere. I had no idea that kid was going to be any good. But I think you're right on with Rondale Moore, right? The emergence of Michael Wilson specifically, who is 6'2", 200 pounds, the only wide receiver outside of maybe Antoine Wesley. I don't even know if he's still on the team anymore.
No, he's not.
Who can play a position or a possession wide receiver role, right? Rondale Moore is not going to be able to do that. Rondale Moore is part of the old regime, right?
Yeah.
So if all he can do is work out of the slot, that is a bit concerning to me. Now, at his ADP, again, the way that I've been drafting, he's not going to negatively impact me too much. He's going to be wide receiver 7, maybe. So if you are looking at him for a spike week type of thing, I don't necessarily hate him. Right. He will give you a little bit of wide receiver depth, but you got to remember he's probably going to end up in a slot only position. With Hopkins gone, I know a lot of people were expecting him to actually play an outside receiver.
No.
That's not going to happen.
No.
He is 100% going to exclusively run out of the slot. Maybe he returns kicks
or in the backfield, even potentially a guy like that.
Right. And again, I think the issue, I got a little bit more of him early on because that's where I was. But as I started paying attention to the news with Michael Wilson, like this motherfucker is really going to actually end up getting the role.
Oh, yeah.
So Michael Wilson was drafted by Monty, the new GM, he is a part of the new regime. They want to see him get work. His direct quote was, is he going to start? It's, well, let's see how he does against Pat Surtain. Like, That's what we're going to find out. He's going to go run against one of the best corners in the league, and we're going to find out immediately if he's worth it. I don't know, maybe draft during that game, because I think that game is going to be huge.
He's perfect to play opposite Hollywood Brown. Like, the archetype that you want is that. You have one of the fastest dudes in the entire league who can knock the top off of defenses, and you got Michael Wilson who could catch the ball over anybody. So that's perfect. And then you rotate out Greg Dortch and Rondale Moore in the slot, and there you go. So I think all these dudes, I besides a little bit of Marquise Brown, to me it's even a little risky. I don't know why. I just feel like Marquise Brown, like you were saying, did you say this in the show, or did you say this pre-show, where it's like, what are they going to do with Marquise Brown? Do they trade him? Like, they could, so like, what were you saying?
So yeah, Hollywood, I think his situation is very much tied to just the situation and how the organization treats Kyler. They're best friends. They are just 100% best friends. They want to play together. If the organization starts shifting that they're potentially shopping Kyler, I do think that we could see kind of like a quiet quitting bullshit situation, or like a soft holdout type from Hollywood. Like, I don't know if he's going to be too happy to be here if his buddy's gone. So like, that's a narrative we'll keep track of during the season. I don't think it's going to impact our drafting now. We got confirmation from an actual beat reporter for the Cardinals. He replied to us on Twitter saying that there's no issues with Rondale Moore or not Rondale Moore, with Hollywood Brown, and like, he's just undisclosed injury stuff. They're just keeping him on the sideline for now. So this comes into where you stand on what's happening with Kyler Murray. If you think Kyler's staying, Hollywood's probably going to have a pretty decent year. He's going to be heavily involved. If you don't think Kyler's staying or playing, then I don't expect Hollywood to really have much interest in playing, to be honest with you.
So much for our 30-minute estimate. I mean, you get us talking about Cardinals, you got a problem. We're about 36 minutes. Sorry about that, guys, but we're going to keep moving on. There's some good info here. Trey McBride, he was going in the last round, then he moved up, and then like, he's kind of all over the place. But as Zach Ertz starts to fall out of even being drafted at all, we're seeing a little bit more Trey McBride around that round 19, round 18 maybe. I mean, Trey McBride was drafted as a pass-catching tight end, and that's what they're going to want to use him as. So to me, like, there's some fantasy upside to a guy like Trey McBride. We saw him, he played okay in his rookie year. There was no real issues. But getting a guy like a tight end like this at the end of the draft with some decent upside, because there's just not a lot of other guys to throw the ball to. That's why, like, I agree with what you were saying about, like, sort of this zero tight end strategy where you pick up 3 or 4 dudes in the last, like, 5 or 6 rounds, and Trey McBride would be one of those dudes. Last guy to talk about here. So Charleston Rambo, one of our XFL dudes from Orlando, he was signed. He has since been released, I think, yesterday. He was either put on the IR. There's a potential for an injury settlement. Maybe he's put on the IR and he's put on the practice squad, or they can re-sign him. I don't know exactly what's going on with Charleston Rambo. I've gotten a few drafts with him in like the 20th round to complete my stacks. He's not a guy that I'm drafting anymore. Not that you should have been drafting him in the first place, but I'm crazy when it comes to round 20 guys. Olamide Zaccheaus is probably the number 4. Quez Watkins taking reps for Devontae Smith when he's out. Quez Watkins seems to be the number 3, but the problem is with this offense, the number 3 guy, how much can you really rely on them to get to see reps and to actually see targets? Zaccheaus and Watkins, to me, are 20th round guys that you want to grab to complete your stacks, either as Jalen Hurts or as a run back to the Cardinals. Any other thoughts here? Any other thoughts before we move on to show you some lineups that we've drafted?
Yeah, like, I don't want to get too crazy with this, but like, if you're thinking about drafting one of these, like Quez Watkins or Olamide, you did a good job pronouncing his name, Zacharias or whatever the fuck. If you're trying to draft one of these guys, just X them out and see if Michael Wilson's available.
Yeah,
right. Like, their ADP is messed up at this point. Like, even Trey McBride, right? Like, these guys just this offense is still going to have what 3,000, 3,500 passing yards total over the season, even if Colt McCoy only throws for 2,200 and dies, and Clayton Tune comes out and finishes up 1,300. What is that? That's 5 games. Like if you can't throw for 1,300, anyways, these stats have to go somewhere. So like think about it from that perspective, and
Yeah.
you know. Quez Watkins is not going to outperform Michael Wilson. So when you're in that range, find those guys that are going to be a second wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And a guy like Keontae Ingram as the backup, like I'm not really going to go out of my way to back up to draft any backup Cardinals running backs at this point, because I just think that Connor gets all that volume. All right, let's look at some lineups here. This is one that I drafted. I don't even remember. This is actually this is pretty recent. So I got Justin Jefferson. I got pick 1. I got Jalen Hurts at that next pick with Olave. Then I went wide receiver quite a bit after that. I got Dallas Goedert at pick 72. So I got Hurts and Goddard. Let's see, who else did I get from Philly? I got Kenneth Gainwell, and I really like doing this. I like getting Kenneth Gainwell as my second or third option in the stack because he's going to get involved in the pass game. Getting him with Jalen Hurts is a good idea. And you get him for nearly cheap or for nearly free at that pick. If not, you're going to have to wait to the very end of the draft and get Quez Watkins and some of these other guys that probably aren't going to see the field much, or at least get an opportunity. Kenneth Gainwell there is nice. And then if you could see here at the end, I got Olamide Zaccheaus, I got Michael Wilson, and I got Greg Dortch to end this. Now, I haven't been doing this a lot. Like I said earlier, when you're looking at Philly stacks with the run backs, I maybe get one dude usually, and it's usually at the end of the draft. This time I got 2 guys, but still, rounds 18, 19, and 20, I filled that out. Let's look at yours. Let's pull this one up. Talk to me about this one. You got A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts. Who else did you get in this stack for? Oh, that's it. And then you got three run backs. That's solid, though, dude. Hurts, you capture all the rushing. A.J. Brown captures a large percentage of passing yards from this offense, and then you run it back with a bunch of garbage juice from. You did get James Conner here, so talk to me about this lineup.
Yeah, man, I got Hollywood and James on this one. I actually think I auto drafted Hollywood on this one on accident, but I'm not stressed about it, man. I don't mind it. I was still able to balance it out with some solid wide receivers with Terry and Brandon Ayuk there as well. But yeah, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, James Conner, that right there is like that might be a core build week 17, anyways, when it comes to normal DFS, right? Like that's a fine way to build.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason James Conner and Hollywood aren't playing, I fully expect Michael Wilson to be heavily involved in this build. He's my wide receiver 10. So like I'm not too stressed about what I'm getting out of his production. And AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts is solid.
Here's another one here. So what do you got? You got Arizona. So this is just a straight up Arizona stack. And you got Kyler Murray at pick 140 with Michael Wilson, and who else did you get here from Arizona?
It's just Michael Wilson.
No, Rondale Moore.
Oh, no. Rondale Moore. Yeah.
Yeah, with no run back. Fine. I mean, it is what it is. And you got a Baltimore stack. It's hard to get, if you don't get Tyreek Hill and Waddle, it's hard to really complete that stack because you got 3 running backs later on that you can run back with for Baltimore. And maybe we'll do a Baltimore Miami show in the next like 2 shows here or something. But let's keep this rolling. Talk to me if you have anything else to talk about with this particular build. If not, let's move on to our final thoughts.
Yeah, this one's just a little crazy. 4 running backs. I got a little crazy there at the end. Chase Edmonds and Jamal Williams. But I think I'll be fine with Kenneth Walker and Derrick Henry. But we just wanted to show this, right? Snag Kyler Murray just to have a little bit of exposure to him. I just don't know if he's going to end up playing, man.
Yeah. So final thoughts here. Let's sum some of this stuff up. Biggest
Draft
question.
Michael Wilson.
Draft Michael Wilson. Some of the biggest question marks. Philly's running back situation. Arizona, does Kyler Murray come back? I think that changes a lot. I think you got to play it multiple ways in your head. Go into a draft if Kyler Murray is falling to pick 170 or something, or if you set yourself up for Eagles where you don't have Jalen Hurts and you want to run it back with Kyler. I think that you have to make a decision based on what you think can happen. Clearly, Ellie thinks he's not going to play. I just think that it's just too risky at that pick. So you got to make decisions. What else is jumping out to you here as question marks for both of these teams?
I mean, really, the biggest one that I'll be paying attention to is Philly, and the Philly running backs specifically. I'm looking at Swift and Penny. I want to know who's going to come out the leader in that backfield. To be honest, I just want to see who survives preseason.
Yeah.
Those guys are both known for getting hurt.
Yeah, watch the preseason games if you can. Be on Twitter. You know, you're gonna have to get heavily involved with paying attention to the beat writers and the camp and preseason to really see where this is going. And as we get closer to lock, you know, I'm going to maybe hold off on drafting some of these guys until I get a better idea as to where they're gonna go. All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Like the video. Throw us a subscribe. This is show 6. We still got 10 more to go. So stay with us, and we will talk to you guys later.